G'day everyone. Today I'm going to speak about the importance of digital leadership in 2017. Now, if you'd like to dig deeper into any of the research or ideas I share today, there's a resource page available for this talk, which you can access at atrans.co/DTO 2017. That's atrans.co/DTO 2017. Now, there are three things I'm going to cover today. Number one, some of the key challenges organizations face during digital transformation, and the 6-layer digital playbook model that you can use to overcome them. Secondly, I want to talk about why developing strong digital leadership is the critical first step. And finally, I want to really dig into some of the insights around how to become a great technical leader and develop strong digital leaders in your organization. But first, a little bit about me. I've spent the last 15 years or so in digital transformation, and my focus has been on leading transformation in large organizations and government agencies. Now, I've been really blessed to have some fantastic mentors, such as David Beale, Jane Hedger, and Diane Jeans, but I've also had the opportunity to lead some really successful large-scale digital transformation programs. My focus now is on helping organizations with digital transformation through culture, strategy, and leadership development. And leadership development is certainly a passion of mine. In fact, I've spent quite a bit of time over the last few years researching this topic and really digging into it. And as part of that, I've traveled around Australia speaking with great technical leaders across different industries. And we've talked about their challenges and their failures and how they've overcome them, but also their triumphs and leadership lessons. And I've really enjoyed this process. The conversations have been fantastic. I've really learnt a lot. And I'm taking what I've learnt from these discussions and from my own experiences, and I'm writing a book about it. And with their permission, I've also been able to record and release some of the interviews as the Alpha Geek podcast. I'll be quoting from these interviews today, and the technical leaders I've spoken with have such a wealth of insights to share. So if any of the episodes sound interesting to you, I really encourage you to go and listen to them and hear more of their wisdom. There'll be links at the bottom of each slide where I quote, and also links available from the resources page. Okay, let's get down to it. Why are we all here? Well, we all want to deliver successful digital transformation in our organizations. Am I right? Well, why is this? Because we know we can deliver process efficiencies by optimizing and automating back-of-house processes, increase business intelligence, better customer engagement and marketing, and better customer experience overall. But also because it's fun, right? I mean, digital innovation is a really exciting and enjoyable place to play in, and there's so many options and opportunities. It's such an amazing job to have. But who feels like we're there yet? Digital nirvana. Have we made it? Have a think about whether you feel that we're 50% of the way there. Who feels like we've barely scratched the surface? Well, recent research would certainly support an underwhelming response to that question. Tech Research Asia is saying that for most, digital transformation is still an aspirational goal. The Australian is saying that 88% of Australian business leaders consider digital startups a threat. And software giant Progress are saying that Aussie businesses essentially have 2 years to go digital before things turn ugly. Increasingly, the message is digital will disrupt us if we don't disrupt ourselves. And this is true in the private sector, but also in the public sector. Because in truth, most of what government does can be outsourced, privatized, or delivered through partnerships. But we are trying. We try very hard to bring digital transformation into our organizations through the many projects that we run. Unfortunately, tech projects fail. Between 50 to say even 80% of technical projects fail or underdeliver, depending on whose research you're looking at. Now, to understand why this is the case, we have to understand the environment that led to it. And we can do that by looking to the megatrends predicted by CSIRO and other futurist organizations. And these have been around for a while now, and they definitely are coming true and have come true in many cases. For example, the pace of technology adoption continues to increase. We're now squarely in the digital age. Computers, smartphones, and internet access are close to ubiquitous globally. Essentially, digital is our new BAU, and change is the only constant. Which also means that stakeholders now have access to increased array of options and ideas for what technology can do for them. So we're seeing increasing expectations and more complex stakeholder requirements than ever before. Stakeholder expectations are being pushed along by a trend towards increased customer expectations as well, and improved digital experience for customers. The Great Expectations trend means that even staff will have increased expectations about what work and life will be like. They want to focus on self-actualization more and more. They want to be part of something greater than themselves, and they expect work can help them to be all that they can be. And to top it off, there's a global megatrend towards delivering more with less, and it's only going to get worse. And if we put all that together, we see that the environment we're working in represents a continually increasing expectation to provide more and better to staff, stakeholders, and customers with less resources. It's no wonder projects fail, and it's led to some really common problems in businesses. It's getting harder to generate stakeholder buy-in. After all, they have so many options at their disposal now, and harder to secure resources behind our ideas because there are less resources to go around. Stakeholder requirements are too complex. What may be feasible for a standalone cloud offering becomes much more complex when you need to meet the enterprise demands of compliance, scalability, and interoperability. And staff are not as engaged as they need to be, which means they don't perform as they could. Can you relate to these? Interestingly enough, these don't sound like technical problems. Interestingly, the reasons tech projects fail are to do with people. So we can see that it takes more than just brilliant technology to have digital success. In fact, digital transformation needs the support of many layers and levers across the organization, including culture. Now, the organizations that are succeeding in more than skin-deep transformation have focused in these areas. Number one, commitment from the top. A culture that supports change and innovation. A digital strategy that looks to the future, not just dealing with the challenges of the present. Strong leadership development, especially digital leadership development. And digital skills and capability within the organization. And finally, technology platforms and agility. Now, we won't have time to unpack all of these in detail, but if you're interested to find out more about all the layers, you can visit atrans.co/playbook. Today, we're here to focus on the leadership layer in particular, because it's the critical first step. It takes time to attract and/or develop the leadership you need, and once they're in place, they can then lead the development and enhancement of the other layers of the playbook in your organization. In developing strong digital leadership, we need these two things in particular. Our executives understand the business, but often lack the digital depth needed to define a clear digital vision and confidently deliver on it. And our technical leaders understand the technology, but often lack the people skills to drive change and bring everyone else on the journey. So I want to talk about these two. Initially, we'll just explore digital depth. What do I mean by executives with digital depth? Well, they need to have comfort with digital technology and concepts. You might consider getting an advisor for critical conversations. This could just be a technical leader within your organization, one that's able to align the technology with the business and the business direction and strategy. We need to be aware of current trends and strategic foresight, what might impact the business coming down the track. And thirdly, they need to be aware of their role as a digital champion. And a key part of that is pushing through the bureaucratic blockers within the organization that are there trying to maintain the status quo, prevent loss from their own empire, or just generally be risk and change averse where they need to be much more pragmatic. And secondly, we need strong technical leaders who can reach outside of their comfort zone and influence around the business. After all, digital transformation isn't just about technology. It's about innovation. It's about culture change. It's about starting a movement. Your organization needs leaders in the trenches driving this change and bringing the organization with them. You need leaders who understand the technology, communicate clearly and influence those around them, and leaders who can bring the organization on the journey. So who will that be? Well, your tech leaders are in the trenches already, and they understand the tech already. but they tend to need a little help with the rest. What I hear time and time again is that tech leaders don't need help with the technology. They need help with the people side. So our tech leaders are great with technology and solving problems, but generally less so with leading and influencing people. But once they can align with the business strategy and direction, they can also be your digital mentors. So step 1 in the digital playbook is to develop strong technical leaders who can do all of this for you, and it's definitely possible. In my travels, I've run into many brilliant techies who've grown into really successful and inspiring leaders. Ted Tenzer is one of them. Ted has delivered incredible success at Finder and grown the technical team there over 400% in the last 2 years during a challenging growth period for the company with almost 100% staff retention. So how do we develop our technical gurus into great leaders? Well, there's a recipe we can follow. At a high level, there's just 3 steps. Step 1, we want to leverage their existing strong IQ. Our tech professionals are clever people. They're good thinkers and they're great problem solvers. And this is a fantastic foundation for leadership. Step 2, we want to increase EQ, or emotional intelligence. Now, the literature very much supports the power of emotional intelligence in the workplace. For example, 65% of employee performance problems are the result of strained relationships rather than a lack of skill or motivation. We also know that high EQ CEOs outperform those with poor EQ by 500%, and similar performance gains can be seen across the layers of the organization. We also know that EQ can better predict job performance than IQ or personality. But why do we need to focus so much on EQ? Why is this so difficult for many of us? Well, because EQ isn't really taught. Have a think back through your formal education. Would you say that more than 50% of your education has been focused on EQ or people skills? More than 30%? More than 10%? Well, for most people, it's less than 10%. Most formal education focuses on developing IQ and knowledge, and EQ is often overlooked. But the really good news is we can make rapid gains in EQ even as adults, and this will really help us reach our full potential influence and impact in the workplace. But let's not forget IQ. It's not enough to have good EQ alone. Research shows that the two together are where you find top performers. So we need to balance the two. But how do we know when they're balanced? Well, I like to think of IQ as being a focus on what's correct, where EQ is more of a focus on what's useful. Now, sometimes those overlap, and the most useful and efficient way forwards is to jump straight to what's correct, but often it's not. Often jumping straight to what's correct or correcting people can put them offside and take the conversation backwards. So we should always start by asking what's useful first, and this is how we balance them. Finally, we also need a dash of mindfulness, and even less is taught about that. So what is mindfulness? Well, mindfulness is a collection of psychological and physiological techniques that allow you to relax the body, sharpen the mind, and be focused on the present moment. These techniques can also help you deal with stressful situations without letting anxiety, frustration, or even anger cloud your thinking and make you act rashly. Mindfulness then allows you to use your EQ and IQ to best effect. The idea is to balance being relaxed with being alert and find a sweet spot in between. And once you do, you can enter a flow state. You'll need to be applying your EQ and your IQ to stay in the flow, but the mindfulness is what helps get you there. And this is how elite athletes get to that flow state, or otherwise known as being in the zone. Now, at the core of mindfulness is the ability to use deep breathing to engage our parasympathetic nervous system and relax, even when we're under pressure. If you'd like to know more, go to atrans.co/breathe. There's some fantastic videos there from Cameron Aggs, who's an expert in this space. Putting it all together, it looks like this: IQ, EQ, and mindfulness. But we need to start with mindfulness because that allows us to be present and focused. We then apply EQ to determine what's useful now, and then we can deploy our IQ to maximum impact. You can think of influencing like a game of poker. Mindfulness helps you let distractions go, be present inside the situation, and not let emotions get the better of you. It's like sitting down at the poker table, relaxed, alert, and in control, ready to play your best. You then need to apply your EQ to work out what the other person needs to move forwards in the conversation right now. So if you're familiar with poker, you know you have to play the other players as much as you play your hand. And finally, we can deploy our IQ for maximum impact. How should we play the cards we've got? What are the odds? When do we raise or fold, for example? These tactics come from the IQ space. So if we put it all together, it's a powerful platform for leadership and influence. And this is a space I've spent a lot of time working in and thinking about how best to share all of the things that I've learned about delivering successful transformation through studying my mentors, other great technical leaders, and through my own hard-earned trial and error. And there are 6 focus areas that seem to go underappreciated by many technical leaders, but the leaders that have developed themselves in these areas outperform others significantly. Now, I won't go into all 6 today, but go and check out atrans.co/6 if you're interested to find out more about those. For today, I just want to give you a taste of some of them in the service of greater influence. So your ability to influence can be represented as the product of your rationale, your credibility, your clarity, and the dance. So let me break that down. Your rationale is about how good your logic and your thinking and your arguments are. Credibility is about how trustworthy and reliable you are. Clarity is about how clearly you communicate your ideas. Now, the dance is a combination of mindfulness and EQ. How well you navigate the conversation, the people in it, and the context. It's really about the human complexities and nuances of navigating a conversation or a situation. Now, I want to take the rest of the time today to explore each of these 4 components with you. This should give you some insight into how we can develop technical leaders inside our organizations, but there should also be some good tips there that you can use yourself in the service of increased influence. That's where we want the information to get through to for processing. However, even the neocortex takes shortcuts, and these are called cognitive biases. And this is because we have to deal with so much information and make so many decisions every day that our brain takes these shortcuts, and we have to be aware to mitigate against those. And the best bang for your buck approach to mitigate against those is to seek out diverse perspectives and opinions and really be open to other people's perspectives. So by way of a mini case study, I'm going to tell you a bit about Stuart Gibbon. Stuart has had a really impressive career in digital transformation inside of large organizations. He's been in CIO roles himself and is now leading the rollout of the digital strategy for the Western Australian government. He's a really switched on and very confident character. However, he balances that confidence with humility. He remains open to other people's perspectives to ensure his thinking is sound, and you can see how he utilizes this tactic to improve his rationale and increase his influence. Credibility is next. So credibility is all about how trustworthy and reliable you are. And the key insight here is that people tend to judge us based on our actions. They don't see our really good intentions that sit underneath. So if we say we're going to do something, but we can't follow through, or we do it a little bit differently to what was discussed, they see that as untrustworthy and we lose credibility and can be really difficult to recover from. So tactics in this space are around transparent and proactive communication, being really clear on our intentions and explicitly communicating them, and then following through to make sure that we do what we say we'll do. As another mini case study, let's have a look at Simon Goodrich. Now, Simon is the co-founder and managing director of Portable, who provide really excellent service design and development services to government and businesses who are trying to make a difference in the world. Now, Simon has built a number of successful businesses and is the Australian ambassador to the International Webby Awards, among other distinctions. But what I find most impressive is Simon is really clear on his values and purpose in life. And this comes through in every conversation. And I believe this clarity of intentions really increases his credibility and boosts his ability to influence those around him. Clarity is third, and this is all about how clearly you communicate your message. And the key gotchas here around the level of detail, too much information or not enough information, and the right timing. So, some fairly obvious tactics in this space, rather than telling someone everything that you think they might need to know, is to summarize up to 3 or 4 bullet points and then let them pull from you any extra information that they need. So this is the difference between a push style of communication and a pull style of communication. With the pull methodology, you focus more on asking questions of the listener and trying to work out where the gaps are in their knowledge so that you can fill those in very strategically. And finally, we want to clarify assumptions. And again, another great way to do that is using that questioning of the listener. Peter Buckmaster is the Director of Digital Services for New South Wales Department of Education. And Peter is a really strong proponent of the critical importance of clear communication when you're trying to take the organisation on a transformational journey. Now, Peter uses creative ways like audio, film, and multimedia to communicate his messages really clearly, and he's used these techniques to lead really successful digital transformations inside of organisations. But you don't necessarily have to use all those forms of multimedia. What's really important is the clarity of your message and the narrative that people want to follow. Finally, let's unpack the dance. Now, this is where we're going to use mindfulness and EQ to engage in a dance with stakeholders. The key insight here is to think of influencing less as a fight and more like a dance. Less adversarial and more collaborative. Less of a focus on what's correct, at least initially, and more focus on what's useful right now. The dance is therefore the most efficient path through to what's correct. It's also how to build and maintain high-performing partnerships and relationships into the future. The dance is a really complex topic in itself, uses a lot of mindfulness and EQ skills, but to summarize, there are 3 main problems that can occur. You can be too deep in your own head and miss out on the cues that the other person is sending. You can be too deep in another person's experience, too eager to please, too focused on what they need, and miss getting what you need. Or you can be too focused on the big picture, the process or the context, the agenda for the current meeting, and miss the fact that the person you're speaking with isn't keeping up. They're just not on the same page as you. Or you can be way out there somewhere. This is really another form of being lost in your own head. So the tactics in this space are around staying relaxed and alert. We can use our mindfulness techniques for that. Focused on the current moment and balancing between self, other, and context. And we do that by constantly asking ourselves, what moment is this? Is this a moment for my needs? Is this a moment for the context? Or is this a moment to focus in on what they need to move the conversation and the relationship forwards? John Smilek is the CIO of Streamline Products in Victoria. When I caught up with John, he shared with me how difficult it was for him as a young person when he realised that he thinks very differently to others. It turns out John has Asperger's, and he found communicating and dealing with people challenging. But he forced himself to spend time with people and learn how to interact better, and it really paid off. As a CIO, he's now a connector inside of his organisation, successfully bridging the gap between people, technology, and the business. And this tells me that EQ and the dance can be learned. You don't have to be born with this innate ability in this space. So as you can see, practicing tactics in these 4 areas will result in your influence skyrocketing. But it's not an easy journey. Employing these tactics can be really uncomfortable, especially when we're not used to it. The secret here is we need to do them anyway. It gets easier every time, and soon it will feel perfectly normal. You'll expand your comfort zone and be capable of so much more over time. And by encouraging the technical leaders in our organizations to do the same, we can develop technical leaders who can generate stakeholder buy-in and commitment, not just gather requirements, but manage stakeholders and align requirements to reduce complexity, and build high-performing teams and partnerships, ultimately delivering successful digital transformation. I'm just about done now, but before I close, I want to point you to the resource page for this talk. If you haven't been there yet and you want to check it out, it's atrans.co/DTO 2017. It contains the slides for this talk and links to all the resources and people I mentioned. So check it out. Feel free to pass it on to colleagues who you feel will get value from it. So in closing, there are 3 things I'd like you to remember. Keep progressing the 6 layers of the digital playbook in your organization. Empower executives with digital depth so they feel comfortable leading the charge. And most importantly, develop strong technical leaders who can lead and influence and bring your organization on the digital transformation journey. Because in doing so, you can set your organization up for digital success, embed innovation as part of your BAU, and just have a lot of fun in the process. Okay, that's all from me. Until next time, remember, think big, start small, enjoy the journey, and never stop learning.